Welcome to the Simply Be Found Huddle. Today we have Mike, our guest, on. Mike, can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and just, what you have and how they could get a hold of you if they want to? And then we'll kind of just have a conversation and see where it goes from there.
Sure, yeah. I'm Mike. I'm one of the owners of Bear Iron Works in Grand Junction, Colorado. We started making the products based on our background in construction. I've been in the construction my whole life, and our website is beariron.com.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Now you do all kinds of different stuff in the construction area. You do the different stuff for a lot in the for the construction, the mining, all that different stuff. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and how you got into it?
So yeah, I actually, it was kind of a little bit of a story there. So I've always been in the construction. I had my own construction business mostly, other than when I worked for a few other little companies. But so one day I was playing golf, and I've always known about the grizzly rock screens, kind of like. And I looked over in this golf course that had a maintenance yard, and they had a small one for like a skid steer. This is like 30 years ago when I seen this. And I thought, yeah, one of these days I'm going to build one of them because I have a pretty heavy welding background. And so one day I had here back in about 2016, 2014, somewhere around in there, I had some extra iron left over, and I needed to keep a guy busy during the winter, and he wanted to learn how to weld. So we built one of those grizzlies, and turned out well. And we started building them for skid steers instead of the big machinery. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how we started. And then it was no big deal. I was selling them on Craigslist, and I'd take some to Ritchie Brothers there in Denver. And so what really popped it was when my son went to college. He was going for construction management there at CSU in Fort Collins. And he was really wanting to do website design. He's really good at it. So he developed a website. He's like, I needed a job. So he started building these because I taught him how to weld. And so he went and found a farmer and got a shop to build stuff in. And then it kind of boomed on him from when he built the website. He ended up having about a 6,000 square foot building in Fort Collins, and hiring all of his buddies to help him weld. And he developed it and did really well. And it got to be too big for him while he was in college. So he finished his construction degree. And then now he's the vice president of the company. He lives in South Carolina, and he takes care of a lot of our marketing and things like that.
Awesome. Now, see, that's my background is the marketing side. I've done some stuff in the construction world. I mean, I worked for Denver Water, if we go back into the 90s and all that stuff. So I exposed myself to that, and I was kind of when the .com crash happened, and then ended up getting pulled back into this. I mean, it's interesting on how much the digital marketing world has changed, even like the iron industry, the construction industry, on all the opportunities that are out there. So my background is majorly being able to take somebody that is looking to get found, being able to get them found on voice search, get them found on all the directories, and building software for people to do their own marketing without having to use us for everything. We do stuff for them as well if they need it. But that's something we could definitely explore if you ever wanted to explore it, as far as what our background is. But I think we deal with a lot of iron guys out there that do a lot of the welding and all of that, which they're starting to see a need more now for marketing and coming into the digital world more than they've ever seen from the ones I'm talking about. And I'm kind of hearing that from your story as well, and how it kind of kicked off at the website and all those pieces. But if we go back 10 years ago, that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
It was word of mouth. It was going to the auctions. It was doing all of that. So Mike, my background, when I grew up, I was we were in the furniture world. So my parents and my grandparents owned new and used furniture stores. So I used to go to all the auctions, Ritchie Brothers, all that, and buy major amounts of allotments and all that stuff. That's what I grew up in. But the whole world we're in today is not the same world as we were. And it's gotten a lot faster with AI and all that. How have you guys adapted to the changes that are happening out there?
Yeah, very, very well, because I pretty much turned it over to my son. He takes care of all that. He does have a guy hired to do marketing. And I've learned a lot about that. So we they read analytics of what's going on, who's clicking on our Google website or Googling us, or who's clicking on from Facebook, who's clicking on from, like, I have an account on eBay, who clicks on from there, and they're able to track all that. So, but it's been really well. I've learned a lot. I don't get involved because I know that I don't know anything about it, and I know that's where the world's going, and it's hard for me in some aspects to sit there and look at that. But then I also know that, I think what really turned me to let my son take over is I was watching a thing about Henry Ford back in the day when his son came to him and said, his son says, "Hey, them Dodge brothers over there, they're putting on windshield wipers and headlights on their cars and everything." And Henry Ford's like, "We don't need that. People can't afford it." Well, we know what that turned into today, right? So,
Exactly.
so I just let him kind of have at it, and we have meetings all the time about it, and he fills us in on stuff.
Well, when you look at the car industry, it used to be where, if I remember correctly, you would have to, everything was an add-on. So you had to piece everything together. You had to wait for the factory to build your car, and then it would come to you at one point inside of the auto history. And then, like, well, this doesn't make sense. And they started letting car dealerships customize all of that. When you're talking about, now windshield wipers come on every single car. Right. But that whole entire piece adapted over those years.
Yeah.
And I know you and Dean would be talking about the construction world big time if he was on today. And being a business owner, he got stuck doing all those other stuff that decided to break for today. When you're going through and you're building out your stuff, what is your main specialty?
You mean the items that we build?
Yeah, for the stuff
we build the rock screen. So what we did is we took the rock screen, we took the smaller one for the skid steer, and then we made bigger ones for backhoes, and we made ones bigger for big loaders and big excavators. And then what we did that's a little unique, and actually our competition has copied us now, but we put on a removable screen. So we took a rock crusher screen, and we can put any size on there from 1/8 inch all the way up to like 6-inch removable screen. So we have like a true screen now.
Okay.
And they can remove that screen with their loader bucket. They take it off, put it on the ground. They can put a different size on there and screen whatever size rock or material that they need. And then we even make one small enough for like ride-on skid steers. We also make bedding boxes, track out pads. One of our big ones is kind of coming up right now is a concrete washout tubs. Concrete trucks can't just clean out their chutes after a pour on the ground anymore. And like CDOT, they're in Colorado, they require one, and ours are approved by CDOT. Plus, we also have them rated for lifting with a crane, like on a bridge deck or a skyscraper or something like that. So cool. That's kind of our main products that we do, and we do other stuff. We do custom work too, if somebody wants a lot of oil field custom work.
Oh, there's no oil in Colorado. I'm just kidding. If you ask the state of Colorado, they'd probably say, no, we don't like that oil, but we like the money from it. I personally, I like all the oil. It boosts our economy like crazy. But
no kidding.
When it comes to when you came up with your designs and you were designing stuff out, I know you said you do a lot inside of, the mining and industry, and you mentioned something about gold inside of the green room. Do you go and look for gold and all that and come up with new ideas for that industry as well?
Matter of fact, I do. So like a lot of gold that you find, it's very rare to find big nuggets. The gold that you usually find just about anywhere you go, especially for a weekend prospector type person, it's going to be fine gold, less than an 1/8 inch thick in size. So what I did is I made a screen that's portable. You can take it out in the field and pre-screen all your rock, because when you're trying to pan rock and you got 2 and 3 inch rocks in there, and this thing, you can screen it fast. So that's something I've developed, is just a portable hand screen. And you can use it for like decorative rock in your yard. Sometimes decorative rock gets all dirty, and that we've done it here in Arizona. We cleaned up all of our rock in our yard using that thing and rescreening it.
Toss it in, spray it out, screen it out, and put it back on. You've got your clean, brand new rock.
Yeah, exactly.
If you would have told someone 50 years ago that they were going to clean their rock in their front yard, they probably would have thought you were crazy.
Yeah, you gotta go with the times. You gotta look at everything that's going on, and that's kind of my thing. Is I always look at things, and I'm kind of the inventor of all that stuff. And being in the construction industry, and shoveling, you learn different things, and
You do.
but yeah.
Well, there's a lot of different pieces that are there. So when can someone buy your mining stuff like you were just talking about for those individual screens? Could they buy that on your website?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Beariron.com. You go on there, and everything's on there. You can look at the sizes and make your combinations, anything you want. It's through a Shopify account. It's super easy to use. And yep, you can use a credit card, or you can get approved for a loan, and it pays right away.
Yep. Isn't it amazing what technology has changed over the years? I mean,
it's crazy.
I'll never forget, it was probably about 1997, 98. My grandfather told me that no one will ever put their credit card information online. Nobody will ever do any of that. Their banking information is too private. No one will ever do that. And then look at us today. Everything, you can't have a bank account without it being online now.
Right. Yeah.
But I think things have really changed in that world.
Yeah.
What are some of the big goals that you have for this year for your company, and where you kind of want to take it to?
Yeah, we're coming up with new products. We've built a snow pusher attachment for a skid steer. Of course, it's summertime now. We have other products that we're looking at bringing online. I think the other one is brand recognition. We're trying to get our brand out there. I actually drive around. I took a trip from Phoenix all the way up through, Utah and Colorado and back down through New Mexico. And I stop in like at all the rental yards, a lot of rental companies like our units, a lot of different big companies like our stuff. So I just stop in and, make sure they know about us. And I'm finding out that people, they don't, even though the internet's out there and full of information, that doesn't mean that everybody knows about you. So I'm kind of doing old fashioned face-to-face type sales.
Well, you have to have a combination of both, and most people forget that. And I mean, everybody, so many business owners today want to have that magic bullet, and there isn't a magic bullet out there. There's not a magic wand. You still have to put the work in, and you have to go to work every day and be able to do it. Even if it's being as much automation as you could do, it takes that human approach to be able to do it. Right. I think that's a huge spot that a lot of I don't want to call them the younger generations, but some of the older generations, they just want, one time done it and I'm not going to do any work. And it makes no sense to me, because you have to put work into your business to be able to get it to grow.
Right.
And I mean, it blows my mind on how many people just want that, magic wand. I wish it was out there. I mean, it'd be awesome. It'd probably cost you a ton. And then everybody would be doing the same thing.
Right. Well, the magic wand was kind of the internet, but like you say, everybody's got the same magic wand now.
Everybody has the same magic wand, and it's constantly changing. I mean, I'm starting to see with how AI is coming out and doing everything it's doing, we're moving at a speed faster now than I'd probably describe it back being in probably the 90s, when we went from dial-up to DSL to cable modems.
Right.
Which a lot of people don't even remember those times. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. Yeah. But when it comes to your business and Ironworks, what are some of the projects that you love the most that you've worked on?
Developing the research and development and making the new products and making our products better. We think that we have the best, everybody thinks they have the best product, but we've kind of proven it out in the field. Our competition really dishes on us, because I think that's because we really are hitting them, we're probably taking some of their sales, I'm sure, but yeah, I love every part of it, really. Every aspect. It's new for me because I'm a construction guy. I mean, my deal was either owning a construction company, or I was a superintendent or general manager of a construction company. And, but so, yeah, I like the new part of that, learning all this new stuff that's going on. And then my son helps me out in that department.
Yeah, and I think there's a huge spot that you just mentioned, that you came from that construction world. You use these tools on a daily basis, and now you're testing and going through and manufacturing those tools, or building those tools out to where what is there. There's a lot of stuff you can learn inside of books and do all that stuff, but there's something about actually knowing how they're going to use that product.
Right.
So you brought that up. I think that's a key point for what you probably have that sets you different, up a little bit different than a lot of companies out there, is because you've actually used it and you know how to use that equipment. And then I'm assuming that you go out on job sites and you see the equipment being used over and over, or you have some kind of application that you're using on your own. How do you guys do that and test that?
Yeah, we go out and test our own. We have a big gravel pile out in our yard. We go out there and with either a skid steer or an excavator and try them out and, do everything we can to them to try to help our customers out. But every once in a while, we'll get a call from a customer. Things ain't working for them like we would hope. And then we help them out. Maybe we size their screen different. We put vibrators on our screens too, which is a little bit different for a grizzly. So we can help them out with maybe, more difficult things to screen. So, but it's it evolves all the time. The business does, and trying to keep up with that and being able to put that up on the internet and making sure everybody knows that that's what we do. We go to trade shows. We do some big trade shows. And so, trying to do that a lot.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What are your biggest challenges right now, just with the business? Doesn't have to be on the marketing side or digital side at all. What are some of your biggest challenges that you're trying to overcome?
Yeah, I think,
or that you want to talk about. That's always kind of an unusual question. Now that I say that out loud and think about my question I just asked. So if you don't want to answer that, that's okay too.
That's good. No, I think it's common what's going on in the construction industry, whether you're a contractor or you're a manufacturer, or equipment sales. The sales it dropped. It was up pretty good about October, November. The whole world was looking good for a lot of people and how things were going politically, I guess. And then there was some things that happened, and people were like, what do we do? And you can see on the stock market. I watch the stock market a lot, and I see their sales or the stocks going down, and it reflects on the same kind of a graph that we have. Our sales came down, but now they're picking up again. So it's just that you got to be ready for that kind of stuff, and hopefully you can survive through downturns for whatever reason they may be. And I also see the contractors have a huge amount of work out there right now. It's unbelievable. As a matter of fact, I help my stepson. He does what I used to do. He's in the construction business there in Colorado, and he's got more work coming about than he can do.
Well, it's an interesting piece about the ups and the downs. The stock market, it changes how everybody thinks about things. It affects small business more than I think the common person realizes, because it's that whole entire environment piece. And when the stock market's off, everything kind of gets off, but everything has to have resets and balances on it. If everything, we don't want to be in another 2008 situation again. I personally love downturns inside of business. I think it clears out the wannabes and makes new paths for new spots. I've always seemed to either start companies during downturns, or I was born during a recession, so it's one of those things to where I've always leaned towards it. It's kind of like during when COVID first started. That's when we started Simply Be Found, and it was all built around being on a downturn, being able to help businesses be able to grow during that piece. And then COVID hit about 3 months after we started, which I would have never guessed we would ever had that happen, and it gave a false positive into our economy. So I put all this extra money on it. So it affected our whole entire marketing strategy and how we had to pivot. And then AI came out, and it caused us to have to pivot even more inside of us, which it was like, all right, what the hell was this? I could have never planned for that. But we're just now starting to see where it's starting to balance out for those pieces. But if you don't plan inside a business for that, or be able to pivot really fast, I think that's what ends up killing companies.
Yeah, right.
I've had the opportunity to work with thousands upon thousands of companies. I did venture capital for a while from one of the companies that I sold of mine. And so we did stuff in oil and gas. We did stuff in construction, buying big equipment, buying companies that were failing, all kinds of stuff inside of that world. So your world, I understand, and I've been in it, and I've moved a lot of equipment and worked with Ritchie Brothers a ton for being able to buy and sell equipment too. So I know your kind of processes inside of that world, which It's a very interesting piece, and I think you have a lot of big opportunities getting ready to happen.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're seeing too. It can be pretty big. Yeah, we've shipped, we've made stuff. We've shipped stuff globally. We've shipped stuff to Guam, to the Caribbean, and Bahamas, Canada, remote parts of Alaska. We've shipped to Hawaii. Sold
that's a learning experience, shipping big equipment for the first time.
Yeah, we're lucky. We have a manager in our shop there, and he's a little bit from the trucking industry, and he's really helped us develop a shipping program, and we're really good at it. Actually, he gets really good prices, so we can pass that on to our customers.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now my question is, do you talk about that inside of your marketing?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember seeing it when I reviewed you really quick, but that wouldn't have stuck out to me, so I was just curious.
Yeah, maybe I ought to write that down. Make sure. Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's those small things that can make a big difference.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
I mean, it's the things that you talk about. So like when you show up at a job site and you're talking about your business to somebody and talking about it, or having that phone call and talking about their problems that they have, those are some of the biggest things that you can solve inside of marketing to be able to put on the website. And most businesses forget to put that on there. And then they don't think about the little things they solve all the time that ends up being their biggest bread and butter. I find that all the time. And that's why. So we look at marketing as a tree concept. So in the bottom, you have your listings, which is your distribution, all of your networks and, directories and all of that. Then you have your tree, which is your tree trunk. And that's your website, your SEO. You have your blog up in the canopy, social media, video marketing. All of that ends up connecting all together. So when you kind of look at that, I preach a lot to businesses and on YouTube and everything to be able to start with a video. Just take a video, record it about the problems you solve. And as you do it, the more video content you have, it's going to be in your natural voice. You're going to be able to use that over and over. And you can build up that video marketing. For one, it helps your YouTube channel, helps sales inside of there. But then you can use it across all of your other stuff. And that's one of the biggest things I preach is, okay, talk about what you do. When you get to that sales call, have your sales guy go through and talk about everything he just solved for a customer without saying names or any of that stuff, because somebody else is probably searching for that same information.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah. I mean, I think when I looked at your stuff, I don't think you post to YouTube very often. So I think that would be a big help for you and being able to grow. And that's one of the biggest spots I talk about all the time.
Do you do a lot of YouTube then, or?
So for us as a company, we do a ton of YouTube. So I think we just passed over 2,000 videos the other day.
Oh, wow.
Which to think about that, I mean, that's 2,000 videos. I'm on probably 99% of them. Dean is on probably about 13% at this point, 12 or 13% of them. Getting him on video was a big, huge piece. It was the podcast that ended up getting him to come on the video. So he's going to be 66 this year, I think, if I remember correctly. So he was everything he wanted to be perfect and all this stuff, because he goes, that's just how I was taught. And he was a graduate of Colorado State, and he's an engineer from engineer by trade, and now owns a screen printing company. And then also we're partners on this. He started as a client of mine first. But so now I'm kind of curious, what made you decide to start doing podcasts?
Well, we do have a marketing person, and they're the ones that told us to start doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was your reaction to that at first? I'm kind of curious.
Well, I was just like, I don't know about that, really. And so, yeah, it was. I got used to it though. I'm used to getting. I have my phone coming up here weirdly.
You're good.
Anyways, yeah, I was used to getting up in front of crowds and talking. When I work for Kiewit, you're required as a manager. You got to get up in front of a lot of people sometimes. So and then before that, I was way back when I was young. I belonged to the Associated Builders and Contractors, which I became a board member. And that's when I really started learning how to talk in front of people, I guess, and not be afraid. and just kind of, the biggest thing that I learned right off the bat was you got to be honest. You got to know your subject, and don't try to BS nobody, because then that's when you get nervous. If you don't know the subject, you don't know it. So don't try to BS anybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big piece. I think the podcast piece is really big. I'd be kind of curious, what are the typical types of podcasts you're on? Because I'm always curious on how people are doing that for their business and using it as a way to grow.
Geared towards construction mainly, or business. New businesses, small businesses. One was called the Blue Collar. I can't remember, but anyways, there was a guy that just started one up. He talks to a lot of construction guys and owners, and so yeah, it's been a lot of fun actually. We get a lot. My son's been on it more than I do. He gets on a lot more than I do.
I mean, it's one of those things to where the podcast world is really interesting to me. I mean, we started with doing video marketing and putting stuff up to YouTube and doing that whole thing at the very beginning. But the podcast piece, I started becoming a guest on different podcasts. And what I didn't like is I didn't have much control over it. And it was a lot of these guys wanted to talk to me about AI, since I'm an AI expert. And they wanted to talk about it, and then they tell me it's not going to be published out for 6 months. Or 3 months or whatever. I'm like, what I just said could be totally wrong by the time it gets published.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't, this is going to make a bad name for myself. I'm like, well, I'll just do my own. And I was like, Dean, no, let's go ahead. Let's go through and do it. And he was like, okay. But getting him on video before, it was absolutely horrible. So I was kind of curious just to see what your whole entire piece was behind that. When I was reviewing you yesterday and thinking about today, I was like, all right, well, I don't really know what direction we're going to go with it, but we'll just have a good conversation, see what it is.
Yeah.
What is your biggest thing that you would say that if you were to, I've had a question. Now I just totally had a brain fart. I am totally sorry.
That happens, I know.
When it comes to your target market, what industries do you think would be the best ones that you would want to make sure you get, that you want to know that you would want to break into that you haven't broke into yet?
Boy, we've tried to break into them all. We on accident. So yeah, we get a wide range of customers calling. I mean, we've got the oddest. So we're in the construction, easy, whether it's the construction contractor themselves or the construction equipment guys and rental companies. And then, the mining, all kinds of mining. We've had like CEMEX, they do the concrete here in the United States. We've got mining, like they took some of our screens underground up in Canada, different, maybe gold mines and whatnot. And agriculture, guys that own their own land. And so the oddest one that I had phone call, and it was really, really a weird one, total coincidental. So I get a phone call from a guy up in Maine, and he goes, hey, they slaughter cattle. And he goes, I need one of your screens with a vibrator on it, and we're going to run cow guts across there.
That makes sense.
What? And I said, so how do you do that? And he goes, well, we take if you ever gutted a cow or elk or deer or anything like that, that if you open up that big old gut bag, there's a lot of grass and, whatever they're eating is in there. So they wanted to screen that out when they use it for fertilizer. I guess it's really super good fertilizer.
It would be.
Compost. They could make a compost with it. So they go through so many of them. So I'm like, yeah, okay. So we ended up selling one. The next day, I get a phone call from a guy in Washington State, and he asked for the same exact thing. And I go, so this guy up in Maine? Did he tell you? And he goes, no, man. He goes, did somebody else call about this? And I'm like, yeah. So I sold 2 of them within 2 days for the same exact thing. I've never sold another one since like that.
Now my marketing brain kicks on and goes, did you talk about it so that way when someone searches for it, you come up?
Right. Yeah. It's like,
did you write the blog about it? Did you do the video? Did you do all the pieces to make all that connect together?
That's true. Yeah. Need to. No, we haven't really done that. But
see, now that's another one for you to write down and go, we need to talk about that, because that might be a whole market. So
yeah,
So I grew up here in Greeley, Colorado, which when I was a kid, Montfort was a big piece. It's now, I think it's JBS now, was Swift. So part of, me growing up, one of the tours I did with the school for a field trip was we went to the Montfort Slaughterhouse.
All right.
I mean, I can't imagine a group of 4th or 5th graders now going to a slaughterhouse. I can't imagine my 10-year-old telling me that's what she was doing for the day. But we did as a field trip to see how it all worked.
Yeah.
And they had all these different floors that were set up. So they'd bring them in. They had the kill floor. And there was these metal floors with the holes inside of them. And stuff would fall through and it'd be used in different, so that way they could reuse it in each area. One area was, we're doing steaks. Then we're taking it to this process. And as everything dropped down, that's where dog food and all that stuff came from. But so if you think about that, stuff hits that floor. If you cause vibration inside that floor, it would also, which you're probably naturally getting from people walking on it, that's probably what causes all those separation pieces. So when you were talking about that, I was thinking about that. I haven't thought about that in years of going into that building. I've tried to block that out of my brain.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah.
Now, I'd be kind of curious if they're using screens inside of there. Now, there's a good friend of mine, and he's been a client of mine for years. That's what his specialty is. He does electricity, all the electricity work in big manufacturing, and specializes in slaughterhouses and dirty job, basically, scenarios. I'd be curious if they're using screens inside of those spots, because I bet they are. To be able to take it down. But the fertilizer and the compost from that would be huge. Your nutrients in there would be pretty big, because it's been sitting in there. It's part of the digestive system. Worms would love it. Yeah. But my gardening brain kicks on for that. Right. I love all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But no, that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, we get a lot of gardeners on our small one, our very small one, for like little farm, like little garden tractors we make. Yeah, we get a lot of them making compost, and and we ship them all over. Those are getting to be a big one right now, actually, the small ones.
I was going to say, I'm sure that's picking up. Yep. So what type of things do you do for the gardening world? What are the most common ones you sell for that?
It's, just people using it for making compost, really. Or they're, I had a lady, I think she's in New Hampshire, and she was making everything from compost to screening off rock for her driveways and pathways and whatnot. And she loved it. I mean, she thought this is so cool to have this. And she was actually from Colorado to begin with. And so it's kind of neat to talk to her. She's like, "Oh, I seen you from Colorado."
Now, I'm surprised. And maybe you have this. Is there a screen that you use for doing the rock that would go into the back of a truck or on a trailer for landscapers?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, but we have 3 of them basically that would fit in the back of a pickup. So yes, our Cub, but we call it the Cub. It'll usually fit in the back of a short bed pickup. And then we have our new Growler. It's a little bit smaller, still works with a skid steer just fine. And you can load that up. I even have a video. I think there's a video out there where I got it on a tractor, a Kubota tractor, and I'm actually have a hold of it, loading it. I'm loading the tractor while I have the screen on the front bucket onto the trailer. So it's all in one shot. You just load it up and go for like landscape.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. That makes that process a lot easier to be able to do. Yeah. I know. So when I took my compost out, I just built, same thing like you would do when you're like looking for gold or anything, sift it out. That's how I sifted everything out and made all my top layer compost, and then took the other stuff and made a new garden bed for the year. So, I mean, on a larger scale, that'd be huge. I think Dean has an acre this year of garden, and his big compost pile. So he lives on either 12 or 14 acres. He would have had all kinds of questions for you on that. I'm trying to think of what he would ask, and I can't think of it.
That's kind of why we put the vibrator on. We're really the only ones that do that. There's another kind of company out there. I still haven't figured out their screen yet. It's kind of a folding thing. I don't even know how it works. It's kind of strange, but they can't pull their screen off like we do, but they do have a vibrator on theirs. Ours is really universal. You can use it for about anything. We got people using it for all kinds of things. It's crazy. I got one company called, actually we've had a few of these, Firewood. guys call, and what they do is they go out and they cut
use
their
it for?
firewood up, and so they're like splitting their firewood. You know, they split it into smaller pieces.
Yeah.
They're just dumping it on the ground. They're just going for it. And like, especially in Colorado or the mountain areas where these firewood guys are selling to the ski areas. And so what they were doing is they was coming up there with their loader bucket, and they would load up their firewood into a dump truck or whatever it was in their trailers, and then deliver it to the ski areas. Well, there was all this dirt in with their wood. So they were like screening their firewood out before they loaded it. So yeah,
I guess if you're doing mass scale, that would make sense. Yeah. I've never thought about that.
Yep.
And I know there's contracts, or I think there's contracts out there for all the beetle kill that they're going through. They're getting those state forests. I mean, we should have been cleaning our forest up way before, and we can't manage it like they do back east. Right. I mean, Colorado did themselves a big disfavor on that whole piece, in my opinion. But and managing the forest and letting things drop onto the floor, you can almost use that for the floor stuff. And I'm sure there's different products that are inside that you can almost make a screen that'd be a different size for that. You know, when you're going through and doing it to where it collects certain types of pieces. Right. It'd be kind of like the rock. I'm assuming you could take all this big rock, sort it out between that and small rock, so then you have different applications of where you would use it at.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of a cool process. I like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And then we got guys that just their whole company revolves around our screen. They have our screen, and then they make all sizes of rocks, and so their whole sales is different sizes of rock. Well, one guy in particular, if you've ever been to Moab, Utah, you know everything's kind of red over there. So he has a piece of property where he's got red rock, and he separates it all the way from anything from 6 inches down to like half-inch thick, I think, half-inch size material for, you know, trails and things like that, or whatever people want it for, decorative rock. It's all red. It's really neat stuff.
Have you ever thought about asking customers to send you a video review and how they're using the product?
Yeah, we do that. Yeah, we do have a lot of them send videos. We even have a person that we hired just to call our customers and see how things are going. You know, what we found out is that everybody's doing really well with our product, which is really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, really, and the worst person that ever called me was a demolition company. Well, they were taking in demoed concrete and sizing it for their crusher, I guess. Big company out in California. And so they were screening. They bought one of our great big ones. And I don't know, I get a call just about a year later, and they're like, "Hey man, our screen's all not, you know, doing good here." And I'm like, "Well, send me pictures of it." And I look at it, and I'm like, "Well, it's bent up and things, and there's some holes in the siding, you know, the skirting of it." But I'm looking at the rails. The rails are all there. They're maybe a little bit bent up, and I could tell this thing's being used. And I says, "Well, so how many cubic yards did you run through this thing?" And they're like, 250,000 cubic yards. I'm like, "Really? You guys, you need a new one."
you put it through hell and back.
I mean, this one we got still working. Just because it doesn't look brand new anymore doesn't mean it's not. It's still working for you guys. I don't understand. And so they finally decided, "Yeah, you're right, man. It's just, yeah."
You mean your stuff wears out over time? I mean, I thought metal lasted forever.
We're happy to hear 250,000 yards, because I mean they're making a material they're charging $10 a cubic yard for, so that's a lot of money.
That is a ton of money.
Yeah.
So when you receive back these videos from customers, in that case, are you using them and using them part of your marketing?
Yeah, we try to put them up there. We was putting them in there through. We had a Facebook thing going there for a while, putting them up there. People do look at them, and we was getting some results from that. And we still do. We're still using them.
I would really look and put them up onto YouTube as well, because if I remember correctly, you weren't putting much up on YouTube.
Right.
And I think that's a big opportunity that you're probably not exploring.
Yeah. Okay.
Because getting those videos and going out and just using the equipment, I think people would watch the hell out of that. And I think it would really get your name out there big time.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks for that information. We probably will. We do have a lot of video content right now. We go out to the customers with a, video, them working it or whatever. And so yeah, we probably need to get going more on that. Yep, you're right.
You know, now see, we're the cobbler kid on a lot of things. There's a lot of things where I look at my marketing and I'm like, I preach this all the time, but I never use it.
I do. Actually, I do. I just started YouTube's videos for my gold. I kind of give away a lot of gold, pay dirt and stuff. So I do, just as a hobby, I do that.
What's your most favorite gold story?
Oh boy. I think so. I was always in abandoned mines. I was doing, being around abandoned mines my whole career. And my dad was really good at prospecting. And so he taught me a few things about that. And so he says, if you ever get out on a mine site and you can see where their smelter is, they would be smelting their gold and they would forget about it and it'd get too hot. And right at the point when it gets too hot, the gold splatters. It kind of explodes in a way.
Right.
Well, at that same moment, the fire brick that's in those is real glassy and sticky. And when it explodes, it sticks into the brick. And he told me, he goes, be looking at those brick. You ever find one of them smelters, you look in the brick and see if you can find gold. And sure enough, one day I found, gold, splattered little BBs of gold in there. And then it was in an old smelter. It was an old 50-gallon drum that somebody converted to that. And so I took it to him. There was an old pack rat nest in the bottom of it. And I took it home to him and he ended up getting in the bottom of that. And he found, I think 20 ounces of silver. And some of that silver had gold and silver mixed in it. It was a lot of stuff in there. So just because you go out and pan for gold and do that, there's gold other places that you wouldn't expect in a gold area. So you got to look around a lot. Yeah.
Well, and I think there's a lot of opportunities that people.
Your video there.
Am I back? Am I back?
Something happened.
I see you. Can you hear me? I see you. Can you see me? You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
I could see you and hear you the whole time.
Okay. Okay. We're good to go now.
I'm not sure where I went to.
Yeah, no, there's a lot.
It's just like business. You might start a business going one direction, and you might end up running into something that's going to make you a lot more money and be a lot more enjoyable, or whatever it might be. That's not even where you originally started off at.
Right.
I mean, it's not usually that first idea that ends up going. It's usually something else inside of there. I mean, it depends on the industry, but a lot of things have been discovered because of the necessity of them being built for a business you had before that you started off up to the side. And
right.
Anything in life is that way.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of where I ended up with this company. I was a construction guy. I was moving dirt and ended up being a manufacturer now.
Right. You saw a need and you went and you explored that need.
Yep.
Now, when you were closing up mines and everything for the abandoned ones, I'm assuming you did that here in Colorado, if I remember right.
Yeah, mostly. Yep.
What were some of the crazy stories from that when you were doing that piece?
Oh boy, I was the guy that was closing most of them in Colorado. As a matter of fact, I probably hold the record in Colorado. I've closed about 4,500 of them in Colorado alone, and a lot of people don't like that you're closing up the mines. But when I brought it to my dad when I was a young guy, I says, "Hey, let's go close these mines." He's like, "I ain't gonna go do that. That's a waste of money." I'm like, well, if someone else is going to be bidding on it, we might as well be bidding on it. We'll be saving taxpayer money. And besides that, we get to go out there and in the mining in the areas and look at everything. But it's crazy. I'm from Colorado, born and raised in Colorado. And when I got to go and closing mines, I would go to places. I mean, it's crazy how big Colorado really is. Everybody realizes, it's big because of the mountains and everything. But when you really get out there, it's crazy how big Colorado is. It's just massively big. And everywhere that I've been, I still haven't been to. I mean, there was one time I went. This is the weirdest place that I've been. Was Springfield, Colorado. I don't know if you know where that's at.
Where's
Down by the
Springfield?
Oklahoma Panhandle.
Really?
Yep.
I don't think
So
I've ever been there.
Right. Yeah. And it's crazy. So you're out there and there's all this flat land, and the Division of Wildlife called me up and says, "Hey, can you go down to one of our areas down there? We've got a mine down there that has a bunch of endangered bats in it. And we would like to have you put one of your bat grates up so that it'll help, so people can't go in and disturb the bats." And I'm like, "Sure." So they tell me everything I need. They give me the size of the mine that we got to close. I take a crew all the way down to Springfield, and believe it or not, so I get down there and you're in this flat land, and all of a sudden you drop down in this like canyon. And if I didn't know better, I would have told you. If someone blindfolded me and dropped me off there, I would have said you was Western Colorado, like with the cedar trees and everything there, all the vegetation.
Really?
Just like, yeah, all the cliffs look like sandstone cliffs, like Western Colorado. And it was crazy. I'm like, no kidding. So I'm sitting there, we're working, and this girl comes along, and she's I knew her from high school because I went to high school in Rifle, and she was a game warden there. And I'm like, no kidding, you're from Rifle. That's crazy. But she goes, yeah. And I go, man, this is really crazy down here. We've seen all kinds of animals. And she goes, did you know that this is the biggest trophy game area of the state for elk? I'm like, no way.
I had no idea.
I didn't either. But I guess they pulled out some of the biggest bull elk out of that unit down there in Springfield.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's just nuts there.
So my stomping grounds as a kid is I'd go up for a month and a half up to Gould, Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
So North Michigan Reservoir, Ranger Lakes, all that stuff in there. That's where I love to take my 10-year-old and my 7-year-old up. And I heard there's gold in some of the North Michigan Reservoir or North Michigan River up there, which I had no idea. So I might grab a pan and just kind of see what's inside of there this year. I think they've had fun doing it, but it's one of those things to where I had the opportunity. So I used to always hang out. So there used to be a KOA up there. Have you ever been in that area?
Yes.
So do you remember the old KOA that was down from North Michigan Reservoir?
Yep. Uh-huh. Yep.
So that used to have a bunch of the old timers that would come up there, and they'd go fish off in the private ranch area that was more towards Walden to fish the North Michigan. And I was talking to one of the property owners, and I was probably 13 or 14, and he goes, "I'd really like to do a 100-year lease with you to have access to the lake or the river to be able to do fishing tours and to take over, since you learned from all these guys of where all this was." My parents were like, "Oh no, that would never be a business. You'd never have it." I looked it up the other day. There's a guy charging anywhere between $1,000 and $2,000 a day to take him out fishing.
Right.
On that same water. And I'm like, man, I missed a hell of an opportunity. That would have been fun as hell.
Yeah. Colorado's becoming a state like that for sure. Yeah.
But I mean, there's a lot of spots up in that area that you drop in and you'd think you weren't in Colorado anymore.
Yeah. Yep.
You go over, down the road and up and over, and you're in that whole valley that you never even knew existed.
Yeah. That's the way Colorado is.
And if you've never went exploring out there, you'd have no idea.
Right.
I mean, it's absolutely crazy. Colorado's so big, and there's so much stuff that is absolutely nuts in it. That's why I love Colorado for that reason.
Yeah, I've been in the areas. I mean, like you're talking about up there at Walden, there's not a lot of people up there. It's kind of fun to get out there. I mean, the other places are, you get down south like Alamosa and Monte Vista area, and just a whole new world down there.
It's a whole different type of pretty people you find too. I love getting around. I love going and talking to people. So it's one of those things to where I like to hear all those old stories and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But everybody gives me hell. Most of my friends are over the age of 60. So, I mean, it's just, that's what I grew up with. That's what I've always been comfortable with. I'm like, all right. It just works. Yeah. But I mean, Colorado is interesting. So I've always been kind of interested in the mining world and kind of looking at that. And I follow a group that gets all upset about, everybody coming and closing the mines. So I figured there's some crazy. Yep. I figure there is. I I figure there's a lot of people who are upset about it, but I'm sure there's some really cool stories for some of those mines, especially if you did you ever go down any of them before you closed them up?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been down a lot of them. It's crazy, some of the stuff. If I would have had a camera back in the day, I mean, there's a lot of cool videos out there, but man, some of the stuff I've seen in there is just wild. Just really, really wild stuff. Everything from odd growth of some sort of odd. There was one mine over by, I think it was by Creed, Colorado.
Okay.
And we got way back in the mine, and you could feel the humidity back there. And it was just thick, and there was like, it looked like old man beards hanging down 2 and 3 feet.
That's
everywhere,
crazy.
everywhere. I still to this day, I don't know what it was. I've never had anybody explain what it was, but it was white, like little white crystally. You touch it and it's just delicate and it just fall. Been in uranium. What's that?
I wonder what that is. I wonder if it was a chemical.
It has to be like a chemical. You know how you get as a kid, you can buy them. You used to be able to buy these little kits and make your own crystals.
That's what I was thinking of.
Probably the same basic chemistry going on there, I'm thinking. But yeah, being in uranium mines, I did a lot of uranium, closing up uranium mines. There's wild. And of course, we always took in, I have a background in mining. I come out of rifle, and back in the day was oil shale. Yep. So I've been back in the oil shale mines. That's one mine that's massively big. It's the old Unocal mine. There's 50 miles of tunnel, 40 feet wide on average, 40 feet high. And they ran massive equipment. And I got to actually work in that mine, for
that's
a while.
Cool.
Yeah. I worked underground the coal mines up at Redstone. Yep. As a welder. But I had methane gas coming up. So as a welder, you're like checking, you're checking for methane gas the whole time so you don't catch the mine on fire. I don't think this is a smart thing to do. But
yeah, certain things go really well together, but that just doesn't go well.
Right. Yep. It's been a wild trip. That was an experience to go in all those mines and see, and a lot of the stuff was left behind just like the day they left it. They just walked out. It'd be the ore cars, the old blasting signs that talk about how long the fuse burns on the blast and things like that, and different tools, and there's all kinds of stuff down there. Most of the time I closed it all up, and it didn't matter to me. I just closed it up.
Well, I think that's probably one of the craziest things is some of that is just like ghost towns. Mm-hmm. And they ran out of money or whatever happened and they just left it all.
Yeah. Yep.
And it sat there for years.
Yeah.
That's a crazy thing to me. I mean, it's like, it's just like a ghost town. I mean, that's just, yep. It's almost like a freezing time for some of those pictures I've seen from some of those guys that go down in those. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, some of the stuff at uranium country is really wild because they, back in the 50s when the United States government told everybody to go find uranium because, he was in the Cold War and all that. And,
right.
Man, the kind of people that it was attracted, not all of them, but a lot of them were like people running from the law. It was pretty wild in Natarita, which is like a big uranium mining town back in the day. A little bit wild, and I heard stories from old timers that were up there working and in the mining camps. There was mining camps everywhere. You can still go there today, and you can find old dump piles that are 2 foot deep, 2 and 3 feet deep of old tin cans and different whatever, and just see where they live. They build like little rock structures, and they build them up so high, and then put like a tent over them or a piece of cloth over them just to sleep in. And it's everywhere out there. It's crazy.
Well, it's like Wild West just being stuck,
mm-hmm.
and it hasn't seen any population. But I mean, you see that at some of the old logging camps and stuff too.
Yeah,
yep. And it's just like, okay, well, this was a logging camp here, and it's like, all right, well, here's your pile of wood,
right?
And it's just decaying away slowly but surely. But but they just left everything,
right? Yeah,
I love history for that reason.
Yeah, we have a lot of rich history like that in Colorado for sure.
There's a ton.
Yeah.
So, Mike, if anybody's interested in finding your company and learning more about you and all the different stuff that you've explored, what's the best ways of finding you?
I would say our website's the best way. It's beariron.com. and it's pretty easy to remember. It's bear, just like the animal bear, and iron.com.
And how did you come up with the name? Now I'm curious.
That's my spirit animal, apparently, because ever since I was a little kid, I'd have dreams about bears. And then I would, when I would be sleeping out in the middle of nowhere in Colorado, there was always a bear. I don't know how, I woke up 3 different times with a bear, like right there, like sitting right next to me. And I've always had bears around me. And I was like, man, bears, I always joked around it. That was my spirit animal when I was trying to come up with the name of the company. That's why I named it that.
That's awesome.
And it kind of goes with the term grizzly. So because it's a rock grizzly.
Right.
Yeah. So kind of went together.
That makes sense. Well, thank you so much for sharing all your stories and everything today.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on there.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right.